Some films were harmed in the making of this podcast. From Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, and the palatial FYC studio, you're listening to For Your Consideration,
the podcast featuring roundtable discussion reevaluating the cinematic canon of past masterpieces and modern classics.
I'm your host, Mike Josick.
And I'm your host, Dustin. Friesenan.
And a hearty hello to all our listeners who are catching the show on YouTube, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Google Play, and wherever great pods are cast. If you're listening to the show on iTunes, we would encourage you to rate and review the show while you're there. It really helps us out, and we would appreciate it. If you've heard the show before, thanks so much for joining us again. And if this is your first time on the show, spoilers ahead.
Yar, there be spoilers ahead, matey.
Here there be spoilers.
Here there be spoilers. But there are no dragons. That is also a spoiler.
There are no dragons in this film that we are covering today on this week's show. This week was my pick. I decided to go for something a little different than kaiju monsters.
A little more different than our fare that we've been doing lately a bit.
And your last pick was Magnolia. Actually, this is not that different from Magnolia. They're both kind of art films.
They're dramas.
They're dramas. Although I've seen this referred to as a thriller, which sort of surprised me. Anyways,
some people are stupid.
The film we're covering this week is 2004's Birth.
AKA that movie filled with people who are not detectives.
I find now that I basically laugh after every dummery. Because I don't know what they are. You used to run them by me before you do them.
It's all part of my evil plan of forgetting to do them until the last second.
So to run the credits for Birth, it was directed by Jonathan Glazer, produced by Lizzie Gower, Nick Morris, and Jean-Louis Piel. It was written by Jean-Claude Carrière and Milo Attica, as well as Jonathan Glazer. It starred Nicole Kidman, Cameron Bright, Danny Houston, and Lauren Bacall. Music was by Alexandre Desplat. Cinematography was by Harris Savid. It was edited by Sam Sneed and Klaus Wellisch. It was distributed by New Line Cinema and released on November 8th, 2004. The film was not initially well received among critics, generally getting mixed to negative reviews, although the film does have its supporters.
Mike being one of them, given that he recommended the film.
Slam Magazine placed it 96th on their best films of the 2000s, and David Thompson of The Guardian included the film in his list of 10 lost works of genius.
Unlike so many films before it, it is 894th on the critics' poll for the Sight and Sound greatest films of all time.
So, as usual, getting into the discussion of the film, Dustin, you have the floor.
Being Mike's recommendation, this time I have not seen the film initially, and he came in talking about how the soundtrack captured him, from moment one, the first minute, and he was just riveted the entire way through. And from moment one, all I could think was, damn, do I hate these staccato friggin' flutes. This soundtrack is garbage. Ordinarily, I think I might have for this one, I think I would have noticed the soundtrack.
It really does stand out.
Like it. It does stand out. For Mike, obviously, extremely positively. For me, I think we have slightly different musical tastes.
When I first saw the film back in 2004, I remember really not knowing what to expect other than my partner at the time was a Nicole Kidman fan, so that was part of the reason why we were watching it. There was the controversy about the bathtub scene and the kiss. When the movie starts and you have the character of Sean just jogging with that music, and it's just this sustained single shot, I was like, wow. It set the tone, it set the pace, and I was just hypnotized for the rest of the film.
I will agree that it sets the tone entirely. Actually, I could sort of gather the...
It's just not a tone that you liked.
I could gather the tone of the film just from the screen that they had on the DVD. I was like, this looks like a generic as balls early 2000s sort of drama that I'm not going to like. But I tried to give it a bit more faith. It it didn't do well. The basic plot is that you have that character Sean, who they're following at the beginning. He completely plot drops everything by saying, what if somebody came by who said that they died? If they came by the next day and they were a talking parrot, maybe I'd believe him. Maybe I wouldn't. I don't know. What do you think? And then he drops dead. 10 years later, he's reincarnated as this kid. And there's your basic plot.
So you do believe he was reincarnated?
We're getting to that.
We're kind of jumping ahead here.
We're jumping ahead. So this kid comes into Nicole Kidman's life as she's about to get married to somebody else in the most awkward possible moment. It's like, hey, it's a birthday. I'm going to sneak into this house and announce that I'm her dead husband. He could have done so at any other point of time, but no, he chose this one to do that. I thought that was kind of dumb, and I was expecting, I'm your husband, like, here's some personal information that I have. Here's some details that will definitely show that it's me, and you get none of that. It's just, I'm your husband, like, what do you want? You want me to prove something to you? Just because I'm a 10-year-old kid means I'm not your husband? Screw you, I'm your husband.
Do you want me to defend that?
Go right ahead, I'm waiting. Jump in.
Well, for starters, for the purposes of reviewing the film as the film, I can't really bring in the fact that Glazer had initially written this story to be told from the point of view of the kid, because the movie should stand on its own. I think that was very interesting to find out after the fact, and to think of all the things that we probably would have seen as an audience had the story been told from the point of view of the 10-year-old Sean. But they are telling the story from Anna's point of view, Nicole Kidman's point of view, so we'll stick with that for now.
I'd say to an extent it's a mixed point of view, because you will have scenes like Sean going up to his classroom and immediately getting kicked out for being late, or him at home saying, I'm not your fucking son anymore.
Oh, you do see scenes that are Sean exclusive, but, I mean, for the most part, this movie is told from the adult perspective. Sean sort of insinuates himself in. Now, my take on the movie is that Sean's dad is a music tutor who teaches, I believe, trumpet or trombone to somebody who lives in the building where Anna, Nicole Kidman's character, lives. I think that these memories surfaced one day because Sean goes with his dad to the building. He probably saw Anna, and this probably woke something in him. He's probably been thinking about this and planning this. He probably, heard about Anna's impending nuptials to Joseph, and I don't think...
Certainly he was stalking her when he saw her burying the letters.
Well, that was...
That was the mistress?
That was the mistress, yeah.
I thought Sean had the letters, though.
He did, but he got those from the buried box.
Yeah, he followed her to get the buried box.
But he followed Anne Heche's character. That wasn't Nicole Kidman.
Then why didn't he recognize her later on?
He did. So, okay, anyways, to get back to my point, I think these memories are things that were coming back to him slowly. I don't think he has a perfect, clear picture. I think he has impressions. I think he has ideas.
He does mention at some point, well, how did you know where Sean died? Well, it's sort of like deja vu.
Exactly. And I think Dustin mentioned the letters. Anne Heche's character is essentially Sean's mistress before he died. She and her husband, who I believe are friends of the family, they come to the apartment for like an engagement party, and initially Anne Heche was bringing a box of love letters that Sean had given to her as a token to kind of show her he loved her more, because these love letters meant nothing to him.
And they were all unopened.
Exactly. She was bringing them to throw them in her face, but then she chickens out at the last minute. She runs into the park across the street. She buries them under some leaves and dirt.
That explains actually a whole lot for me, because I was mistaking Anne Heche for Nicole Kidman there. I didn't have their characters placed at that point.
And he follows Anne Heche, whose character name I cannot remember for the life of me, which is bothering me. But he follows her, and he finds the box, and the box has the letters in it. And I think the letters helped flesh things out even more for Sean. Because one of your big complaints when we've been talking about the movie for the last couple days is, why didn't he just come out with like a laundry list of things that only Sean would know. And I very much got the feeling that his character didn't have all the facts.
And here's the thing. Nobody even bothered asking him those questions. They relied on him to come up with a few details, and he's like, yeah, we did it on the green couch, and that's just supposed to blow everyone's mind. And it's something that they got from the letters, but nobody is getting really direct with him. Nobody's saying, all right, you lectured particle physics at the college where I worked at. Let's discuss particle physics a little bit. Nobody has these questions and starts doubting. The husband, the fiancé rather, he doubts, but nobody's ever asking the reasonable questions. And even if it was just déjà vu, and he just has these impressions, these feelings, if he didn't love Nicole Kidman because he was cheating on her with his mistress, why would his impressions be that of love as opposed to that of indifference? And then Anne Heche is the one that he really gravitates towards.
Well, I mean, someone who engages in infidelity doesn't necessarily mean they don't love their partner. It could be all manner of things that are interfering with the proper functioning of their relationship.
But that's the whole point of his not having opened these love letters. He didn't care about her enough to even acknowledge her feelings. So it is a little incongruous with that part of the story.
And that plays into what happens at the end. I think that's where some of the vagueness in the film lies, and I think that's what bothered some people about the movie, because it doesn't really give you any clear answer. It's entirely possible, and I don't have the perfect answer to this, but he may have come back and he may have been reminded of Anna, and he may have been reminded of feelings that he had for Anna. But as the story progresses, as he meets Anne Heche's character, as Anne Heche reminds him of their relationship, and as he seems to remember that relationship, he kind of realizes that he thought he came back because he loved Anna, but maybe he didn't love Anna.
Certainly he refuses to continue going on with Anna. He says, no, I'm not your husband, I was mistaken, because he loves Anna and he doesn't want to hurt her, despite the fact that that's all he's done. He's completely fucked over Anna's life. The scene with Kidman on the beach at her wedding, that was definitely her best acting there in the entire movie. Like, that was a powerful moment. That shows just how devastated Anna is. How
what about the 5 minutes at the opera?
Oh,
that
God.
Single sustained shot of Nicole Kidman's face. So much is going on there.
Went on so long. Like, the thing is, you talk about that like so much is going on, but it looks like she's watching the opera. She's not tearing up. She's not sort of unable to watch the opera. She's not sort of looking around, just distracted.
No, man, there's so much going on focused. In that scene. Her eyes are starting to water. She looks confused. It's rolling around in her head. Is it Sean? Isn't it Sean? She's starting to kind of believe that maybe it is Sean. Then Joseph will lean to her side and whisper something, and it startles her, and she looks surprised and a little angry that he's like torn her from her reverie.
And it's a solid minute on her face.
Oh, God, it's more than a minute. It's one of the things that I love about this movie is that there's two scripts. There's the script that you hear, and there's the script that you don't hear. There's so much subtext. Every conversation, every line of dialogue, every exchange between characters, there are things being exchanged that are unspoken. And your silence tells me that you didn't feel this.
What I feel is that that's what it was trying to do, but the fact is nobody conveyed really any emotion. I agree, and I love subtle performances, subtle acting. I'm watching Voyager now. I love Jerry Ryan as 7 of 9.
Oh my God, did you just compare Birth to Voyager?
I did! And I compared it negatively.
I think it's time to shut the podcast down.
Jerry Ryan has a lot of subtle moments there as somebody who's not supposed to have emotion. And I loved that. I didn't get the subtlety in her performance here. What I got was blank stares.
Her character...
and non-reaction.
Her husband died. She never got over it. It's 10 years later. She still is having difficulty. She's very withdrawn. Everything she plays is muted. It's underplayed. Apparently, Jonathan Glazer, that was kind of her main direction, is that everything Anna does, underplay it. Her clothing is very modest and conservative. Her hair is cut short, close cropped. There's nothing extravagant or glamorous about Anna. It's the same with the performance. There's nothing too out there. There's nothing too broad. Everything is highly contained with that character. And this is the Manhattan, like, nouveau riche kind of money people. Like, they're wealthy and they're society people. And I think there's a family dynamic there and a cultural, social dynamic there as well. That is acting hugely on all of that stuff. They're reacting the way these socialites would be reacting to this situation. And you said, why didn't they ask him direct questions? I think because he's a 10-year-old kid. I think because nobody believes them. They start talking to him, and they start sort of leading into it, and then he drops a bomb like, we did it on your green couch. And that's usually where things sort of like, they get uncomfortable, and they don't want to deal with it anymore. Also, the movie is very much told in the style of a fable. So it serves a narrative purpose to not just have, we're going to sit you down in a room, and we're just going to interrogate the shit out of you.
Well, I do agree that over the course of the film, you definitely see how the main story is Nicole Kidman's inability to deal with her husband's death. And that, if that were an actual focus, that would have been a far more interesting film, but I felt so much of it was on the mystery of, is this or is this not Sean? They spent so much time just saying, is it? Is he? Ask a little question here that has nothing to do with anything. Get a response like, this is my desk. I used to work here. Just some completely generic thing, and then they focus on that, and he just fiddles around at the desk, which tells you nothing. Is it subtlety? Is it him having déjà vu? Or is it a waste of my time?
Well, I was going to say, so much of the movie, like I said, is subtext and vagaries. If that is a waste of your time, then it is a waste of your time. But the movie is about eternal love. It's about forever love. It's looking at love, what love does to you, how love ensnares you, how love sometimes traps you. I wasn't really thinking of it in terms of the infidelity so much, but you bring up an interesting point where you say the letters were unopened. He was obviously saying that he loved Anne Heche. And there's a brilliant moment. Anne Heche's performance is also, like, amazing. Everyone's amazing in this. Peter Stormare.
Anne Heche is great in this. I will say that.
And when she says that she almost believed him that he was Sean.
Except you didn't come to me first.
And that's why she didn't believe him. And she was like, I would have made this work. Which is kind of creepy as fuck.
There's way too much lusting after that 10-year-old. I can understand why people would be upset with that.
I think maybe he came back for love, and I think he got confused because the stuff is coming back, not completely clear or whatever. Anna was maybe what he kind of imprinted on. And, when he goes back to just being a 10-year-old kid and he tells Anna, I'm not your husband, and he tries to, like, dismantle everything, he may have realized that perhaps the love he came back for was not Anna. Perhaps it was for Anne Heche's character. Anne Heche has already said that she doesn't believe him. He doesn't want Anna to find out, and he's already caused so much kerfluffle, and maybe he's finally seen just the damage that he has done or could potentially do, and that's when he just basically withdraws, goes back to being Sean the 10-year-old kid. And that scene, I think his last scene with his letter is incredibly sad to me.
Because it just cripples Anna. It cripples her completely.
And you have this, essentially, if you believe that he has been reincarnated, you have this grown man in a young boy's body.
Well, you don't really, because what you have is somebody with notions that he might have been at some point.
But he has these feelings, and he has these ideas, and he has this,
But he's not even aware of what those feelings are.
That's true. That's true.
If what we're going with here is that he was actually in love with Anne Heche, he completely misdirected them. So he's not Sean. Regardless of whether or not he was reincarnated, he's not Sean. And he's not got the same personality, the same intellect, can't even direct his feelings properly.
And it is interesting, like that last scene with Anna where she just breaks down. I mean, it is a great performance by Nicole Kidman. There is pain. There is deep human pain. And
that's the best scene of the movie as far as I'm concerned.
I mean, whether or not Sean is her Sean, he damaged something. Like, she was trying to get over it. She was trying to heal. She was trying to move on. And
All she wanted was to be happy, like she told her fiancé, who took her back.
She'll never move on. She is forever. The fact that that hope was kind of given to her, she was willing to make it work. She was like, we'll run away.
And in 11 years, you'll be 21.
And we'll get married, and we'll be together. And
honestly, if I were her fiancé, I would not have taken her back, because if all it takes for you to kick me to the curb and leave me is a random 10-year-old kid coming up and saying that you're the reincarnated dead husband, yeah, you're not with me.
I didn't like Danny Huston's character. I think he played it well, but I don't think Joseph is a likable character, but I do feel empathy for his character, or sympathy for his character, because it is a preposterous sort of situation that he's sort of tolerating. But there is also the fact...
He didn't do anything really wrong. There's nothing specifically unlikable about him. There's just not anything
except where he picks up the kid and starts to throw him around the apartment.
He's ruining everyone's life. Fuck this kid. He, as you said, he's tolerating all of this. But his wife, he's seeing her in the scenes that we're not.
But I also...
she's completely distant in bed now. Like, can't make eye contact with him.
I also agree with you that Joseph, I mean, he's in love with this woman who is clearly not healthy as far as emotionally. He's kind of taken this relationship on. He's dedicated to the idea of it. He may even be dedicated to her, although I don't get that feeling from the way his character is portrayed.
Perhaps it was just subtle.
It could have been. It could have been. But, I mean, he nagged her to go out with him for like a year until she finally said yes. Then he nagged her to marry him for like a year until she finally said maybe. And, I mean, he's clearly... This woman is still connected to her dead husband, and he's like, I'll make it work.
In fact, early on in the film, she tells him about, so a 10-year-old kid told me not to marry you mid-coitus, which apparently to him means go harder. And that was the whole scene, by the way. They're having sex. She says, kid told me not to marry you. Then he goes harder, and it keeps going for 15 seconds for some reason. End of scene. And it seems like that was only there so that he could forget that she mentioned this kid whatsoever in about 5 minutes into the movie. Because when he said, nobody mentioned this kid to me, I'm like, yeah, she did. You were fucking.
I did get a strong impression that he's in love with the idea of Anna more than he is, and what Anna could be for him.
Which would just really suit the whole everybody in this film. Everybody's all about their roles, their upper class money sort of BS.
And you mentioned the music at the beginning, which I then commented on. This is the first score by Alexandre Desplat that I'd ever heard, and I went seeking his stuff after hearing that opening prologue cue. He has since gone on to, I believe, do a Harry Potter film. He was originally going to do the Rogue One score, but then they did the reshoot, so he went on to do Valerian because he wanted to do Valerian. He's done films for David Fincher, Curious Case of Benjamin Button. He did flippin' Godzilla for Gareth Edwards. He's very versatile. He draws from a lot of sources and a lot of influences, and he's just a very talented, accomplished composer. And it's interesting going back and listening to this music because a lot of his other scores, I've been listening to the Birth soundtrack, but I've also been kind of exploring some of the other Desplat that I have. And there are cues in Benjamin Button that are very clear, like stylistic callbacks to Birth. And I'm sure if I went into the Godzilla score and some other scores that I'd find those commonalities, which were really interesting to me. I'm so excited by sort of listening to this music and being reinvigorated by this music that there will be a sound considerations episode on this score. Believe you me. But I can understand the staccato flutes at the beginning. It goes on for a bit.
Well, as you said, one big long tracking scene of him just running until he wins himself and dies.
But I find it to be a very beautiful, moody, dark, hypnotic, haunting soundtrack with some very like classical influences in it that remind me of like Tchaikovsky or Wagner, and I just loved the way that played as an underscore to this film because some of the music felt very odd in some of the places, but oddly fitting.
The rest of the music I pretty much forgot. It was just that intro scene that just stuck in my head.
It was just because I talked up that opening scene. And you said, now you're going to watch it very closely and probably hate it. It's on tape.
Where is it on tape?
You said it when I mentioned that we're doing Birth as an episode. And I was like, with one of the greatest openings in cinema history. And you were like, okay, now I'm going to watch it and probably hate it.
Though, as you said, most people didn't like this film either, so maybe I'm not on my own here.
No. I mean, a lot of people... I don't think it's an easy film to stomach, and I don't think it's a movie... I mean, I find it interesting. It's not going to come out for another couple of weeks, but we were talking about the film Cairo, which we've recently done, and that was a movie that also dealt with vagaries. And the whole time we were talking with upcoming guest host Billy Seguire about Cairo, I just wanted to bring out everything about Birth too, because it's one of those movies that holds things back, and it doesn't give you all the information. It leaves you to have to fill certain things in. I think the important thing with this movie, for me though, in comparison to Cairo, a little sneak preview here for anybody, but where Cairo didn't give you the
right information,
the right information or the through line, I felt that Birth, it had that forward-driving story that you could still sink your teeth into and sort of deal with the vagaries later. It reminded me a lot of some of Aronofsky's more conventional films, like Black Swan, that still have a lot of weirdness in them, but are still very watchable and followable. And this, Jonathan Glazer, prior to this, he did Sexy Beast. After this, he did Under the Skin, which neither of us have watched, but is definitely on my queue of things to watch. And Under the Skin is a movie that people seem to love, but it's kind of out there. So I guess maybe it's just, Scarlett Johansson is an alien sexing up and killing guys, and Nicole Kidman is a withdrawn widower who's weirdly connected to this 10-year-old.
So basically you're saying sex sold Under the Skin, whereas pedophilia didn't sell Birth?
Possibly. And that's what most people focused on. Most of the interviews, most of the reviews was talking about the kiss and was talking about the bathtub scene.
And for that, I'd say grow up. That's not the point of the film, but I think the film also missed the point in that its focus was too sparse. As I said, it felt like they were trying to do sort of a little bit of both, following the kid and following Anna and following other people, and it never had enough focus on any one thing. And the most interesting story, and the one that I feel that the movie was about, was Anna's attempting to cope with the death of her husband. And I don't feel that it really captured that it really focused as well as it should have on that. And instead, it focused on these vagaries, which didn't help its case in the slightest, for me at the very least.
For people who do like this movie or love this movie, one of the things that they point out is that we never meet Sean as an adult. We don't see their relationship prior to Sean's dying and potentially coming back as a 10-year-old kid.
Who is also named Sean, which I find super annoying.
I think that was just to make it easier. And it, again, fable. But
it makes no sense no matter how you slice it. No matter how you slice it.
Sean's a common name.
There's no reason for his name to also happen to be Sean.
I know a number of Seans. But this is a story where you don't see the relationship that this movie is all about, yet you still feel it. You still feel everything that you're supposed to feel had you spent time with these characters, as Nicole Kidman, as Anna, is interacting with potentially her resurrected, reincarnated husband, Sean, as this kid. And I think that's wonderful writing, and I think that's remarkable filmmaking, but I don't think everybody feels that, because you just said you thought it was kind of a preposterous...
I can certainly feel that, it's about her relationship to Sean, the original Sean, and you can definitely feel that love and the loss there, but the secondary relationship to young Sean isn't anything but her attempt to recapture something that no longer exists. And it can't be what it what it was.
And that's an interesting...
Because Sean isn't that person. He only has vague notions of concepts.
And that's an interesting interpretation of the story as well. If you don't take 10-year-old Sean as the reincarnation of Sean, and that he just grabbed these letters and he caused some shit...
It's like a zombie movie. Whether or not Sean is irrelevant. That's the backdrop. The story is Anna.
It's still interesting. You either have this kid who wakes up all of these emotions and causes all of this commotion, and things get revealed about this relationship and these people, or it's a magical, somewhat supernatural story about a reincarnated husband who comes back to try and
wreck his wife's life, I guess.
Rekindle or rejoin his wife in life as it is. I think this movie offers some interesting questions, and I think it's open for interpretation, and I think it's very artfully done, and I think I'm summarizing. So I'm going to stop.
Why not? Summarize. Do it up.
You think this is a game? You think this is funny?
No. What if Bob comes to my house and tests me?
How do you know, Bob?
He was my brother-in-law. If he asks me some questions and I get them right, will you believe me? Will you believe me?
Who told me there wasn't a Santa Claus?
I'll know them when I see them.
You're just a little boy.
And since you're already summarizing, you might as well come up with your answer first. Masterpiece or museum piece there, Mike?
I feel this is a masterpiece. It was just as powerful, if not more powerful, watching it now as it was watching it 14 years ago. And there's things in it I saw now that I didn't see then that just enrich the experience, and I'm sure the next time I watch it, it's going to be just as powerful, if not more. All the things that I've just said about the music, about the story structure, the characters, the things said, the things unsaid, I just love everything about this movie. For a second movie by a filmmaker, I'm pretty impressed. And I definitely think this is a movie that more people should be seeing and talking about. Are you going to at least grant it a museum piece?
I'm so sorry to disappoint you, sir, but no, this is going to be our biggest division yet, because I don't even think this deserves to be viewed as a museum piece. It completely lacks focus. It doesn't know what the hell it's doing. It has its head up its own ass. The most question that they have is done in the voiceover at the beginning before you even see Sean start running. Like, if you stopped the movie right there, that's about all the depth that you get in this film. The one thing that is saving it from ending up on In Case You're Considering is the great performances in a few scenes by Kidman and by Anne Heche. Like, there's some good performances by a couple people, and the rest of it is directed well enough that it doesn't end up on that show, but no, this is not worth further consideration as far as I'm concerned.
Wow.
I would not recommend this to anyone for any reason.
Fair enough. So much for my recommendation. Or so much for my pick this week.
I'm assuming most people are going to fall somewhere in the middle between awesome and terrible.
I think this movie's divisive.
I would love to hear everyone else's opinions about this movie. And for the critics who just say, no, the bathtub scene and the kiss, grow up.
Well,
that's
you know what?
Not a reason to hate this film.
The bathtub scene?
It's creepy. Like, I'm not going to say it isn't.
But you'll notice, like, her character doesn't just shut him down.
She waits for him to get in before saying, what are you doing?
And that's showing where her character's at. It's a character moment, and it's in there for a reason. People were freaking out because here's a 10-year-old in a bathtub with Nicole Kidman. They were never naked together, and most of the scenes, they weren't even in the same room. The only time they were in the same room together was when he's in the bathtub, and they're wearing things to cover themselves that you cannot see. And then there's the kiss, which is not a passionate kiss, and you don't even see the lips touching. And Anna actually keeps her eyes open during the kiss because she wants to see this happening. She wants to take in all of it. She wants to experience the whole of what is going on, and there's a surreality to it that she's still kind of grappling with. But this is all her character trying to wrap her head around the possibility that this is her reincarnated husband. These scenes have a purpose. They're not just exploitation. They're not just, hey, come see this movie because we've done something shocking.
I'll agree with that. And it's entirely non-sexual.
Entirely non-sexual. But it doesn't matter because, according to Dustin, you shouldn't see this movie anyways.
Exactly. There's plenty of reasons to not like this movie. Though she does, immediately fall for him afterwards, regardless. She goes from, what the hell do you think you're doing, to, I'm running away with you for the rest of my life.
She wants to believe. She really wants to believe. But we want to know what you want to believe.
Yes. And my recommendation for anyone is watch this movie thinking that everything else is a backdrop to her desire to have her ex-husband back, or her dead husband back.
So let us know what you think. Share your comments on the YouTube channel, on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Let us know what you think of the movie. Let us know what you think of the conversation, the show. Let us know what you think of macaroni and cheese, whatever.
I personally think that macaroni and cheese is best with some ketchup and mustard in it, but it never sits well. It's always a mistake. It's one of those regrets you have.
You don't like Birth, you put ketchup and mustard on your macaroni and cheese.
I also haven't had macaroni and cheese in 22 years.
How are we going to continue with Dustin? This? I think there's just too much of a divide here. You can also check us out on our WordPress blog, and be sure to take a look at our Patreon campaign. If you want to support the show, like and share us, subscribe on all this stuff, but also check out Patreon. We've got some interesting reward levels, some treats that you get for contributing to the cause. Helps keep the lights on, and it helps us grow the show into something monstrous and interesting.
Turn us into a kaiju.
So next week on the show, I think we're doing an All Things Considered.
That we are.
So we're going to be reviewing a current movie, and we're introducing a new sort of feature that we're trying out where I recommend a movie to Dustin, and Dustin recommends a movie to me. We check it out, and hopefully things go better than
this time around.
This time around. So thanks so much for joining us. Be sure to check in a week for that episode, and we will see you next time on For Your Consideration.
Until then, I've been your host, Dustin.
And I've been Mike.
Take care.
Ciao.
So are you one of those people who's like, my mac and cheese must be made only with the finest human breast milk? It's got to be as haute class as possible. Can't be macaroni. It's got to be rotini.
I like straight up KD spirals. That's my thing. If I'm going to do mac and cheese, it'll be that, or it'll be like restaurant mac and cheese. Actually, there's a place in town that does a mac and cheese with like a meatloaf. It's amazing.
I find mac and cheese so bland and doesn't sit
well.
It's
a side. It's actually a side, but people eat it as a meal.
I'd rather just have pasta salad, something like that. I have a hard time paying for pasta anywhere. They don't have enough on it. It's just, here's some noodles and here's some sauce. And mac and cheese just happens to be cheese sauce. 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 Cheese just happens to be cheese